Good evening and welcome to Tuesday Folk People. My name is Maddie Leedham, and this evening we're going to be talking to the lead singer of the unique and innovative band Harp and a Monkey. Approaching folk music unlike any other folk band, Harp and a Monkey explore poignant and melodic short stories about everyday life, love, and remembrance in innovative and fresh ways. They describe it as the extraordinary ordinary. With four critically acclaimed albums, the Manchester-based trio have been described as bold and brilliant by The Observer, fantastic and fascinating by Mark Radcliffe on BBC Radio 2, inventive by Mojo, excellent by The Guardian, and unique by folk legend Mike Harding. The trio have been commissioned to create bespoke songs by the likes of Arts Council England, the Heritage Lottery, universities, museums, Western Front Association, and many, many more. With frequent national tours, this trio win the hearts of their audience with their easygoing, witty, and fascinating nature. With an hour boasting a plethora of interesting stories and facts, accented by their wonderful music, I'm delighted to welcome Martin Purdy of Harp and a Monkey. Hello, Martin. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you.
Excellent. I'm so glad you could join us. It's going to be a fantastic interview. I can already tell.
Just tell me to shut up if I go on too much.
Okay, I'll hold you to it. But yeah, because you're one of three, aren't you? Could you tell us a bit about yourself and the other two bandmates who've
So
been
yeah, we are a trio, and I am the main singer. I play the accordion, keyboards, glockenspiel, that type of stuff. And then there's Andy, who plays the banjo, and he's like a qualified sound engineer. He does a lot of the audio type stuff, a lot of field recordings, bits of electronica as well. And then Simon Jones, who plays the viola, the guitar, the harp, and he's an award-winning, international award-winning photographer, art photographer and animator. So he also does most of the visual stuff that's sort of affiliated with our projects.
Oh, amazing. So you've got like the sound engineer, the animator, the photographer. It's just...
And then the one who speaks too much.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the public spokesman.
Yeah.
Perfect trio. And just why did you choose the name Harp and a Monkey?
Well, there's a couple of reasons, really. One, well, we do have a harp, so there is some sort of logic to that. We have Simon plays the harp. We'd had a problem. We'd been doing Harp and a Monkey for about 14 years. Before that, the three of us had worked together in a couple of other projects. We'd had recording contracts, sort of quite big recording contracts, with bands under different names. And this is kind of the era when the internet was just starting to happen. And none of us had to consider before the idea of people going on a search engine trying to find you, and how difficult that would become depending on the name. And so, for example, we had a name with a band that we had before, and there was another band in Scandinavia with the same name. There was a band in America that, of course, we didn't know who they were, and then all that confusion started feeding in. So we thought, right, well, we want a name that, if you go on a search engine, you're only going to find us, because there's not going to be anyone else with that. We wanted it to sound like it was a kind of a bit of a dodgy pub, like the American Werewolf film, where he's wandering the moors and he comes across this kind of League of Gentlemen type pub in the middle of nowhere. We wanted that vibe, because the first record that we did was quite a dark record, and we wanted that kind of vibe. So we were like, Harp, well, what do we put that with? And Andy said, you know what? He came up with this bizarre statement that we laughed about and then thought, why not? He said, everything in life's better if you just throw a monkey in the mix. So we're like, okay, Harp and a Monkey.
So who's the harp and who's the monkey?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Simon's the harp because he plays the harp. Andy came up with the monkey, so I must be Anda. That's it. That's my role in life.
It is essential. It's just not got the glitz and glamour. But okay, brilliant. Well, shall we hear your first song, which is Pilgrim's Cross? Can you tell us what this is about before we hear it?
Yeah, this was off our second record, actually. I live in a wonderfully named place on the edge of the West Pennine Moors called Ramsbottom. or Tups arse as the locals call it. And well, I've lived here 20 odd years, and when we first kind of moved here, we always had dogs. Go out up on the moors, walking the dogs. And one day I was in the middle of nowhere, and I came across this stone monolith in the middle of just a completely barren bit of moor. And on it said the Pilgrim's Cross. So I was like intrigued by this. Came home, looked it up, did some research, and found that there used to be a big wooden cross there. And it was apparently a waymarker because there was in the medieval times, there was a pilgrimage route that ran from the centre of Manchester right across the West Pennine Moors to a place called Whalley Abbey in deepest, darkest Lancashire. And this Pilgrim's Cross was to say that you were halfway there, which in a pre-sort of Gore-Tex and Cagoule age must have been a pretty terrifying prospect. Anyway, this is a song about an ill-fated medieval pilgrimage. Saturday, followed the pilgrim's trail, bound for the abbey walls. The faithful come to heed God's call. We walked over moorland paths, hungry from a first day fast. The weight of sin upon our backs, we prayed. Evening the thunder roared, lightning tore across the moor. From heaven the rain just poured, it ran like an open sore. We huddled by the Pilgrim's Cross, way up on Helmshire Croft, in fear of eternal loss, we prayed. Oh dear God, how could you forsake us now? Oh dear God, we're cold and alone, lost sheep a long way from home. Morning came, I heard the cry, a child had died in the night. I don't understand why now this sacrifice. How could you forsake me now? Oh dear God, how could you claim? Why did you take my child? We left on a Saturday, by Sunday I'd lost my way.
I absolutely loved that song, Martin. I think that
Thank you.
I really enjoyed the I don't know if riff is the right word, but it was like the looping of the instruments non-stop underneath. And it kind of
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, we when we first started out, we'd come from there was a big electronic background to what we did, and so we'd always used loops and bits of electronica to achieve that, and we still do actually when we play live. Sometimes we take out that sort of technology with us, but when we're playing acoustically, like that, we still try to recreate that kind of looping vibe and so that's the goal of it. But the harp's the kind of perfect instrument, and and Andy has that ability to kind of lock in with his banjo playing. So it's really good.
yeah, well, I think that it kind of gave it an extra dimensional feel is how I didn't know if that was intended, but that's how I felt the whole time.
Well, just space. I think. Yeah. I mean, it's just space, and also that it's about that kind of trying to introduce modern techniques into quite organic or old traditions. To blend that idea of a bit modern and the old, and that looping technique is much more of a modern kind of dimension that maybe is a bit alien to what people expect sometimes from folk music.
Yeah. Do you ever find that that makes you unwelcome in some folk circles?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, we've had our struggles with that. I mean, it's got easier because I think that we've been doing this about 14 years or so, and I think even in that time, that kind of technology, loopers and bits of electronic stuff, and as kind of more people are kind of open to it now. But no, I mean when we first started, we used to, there were certain places where we would play, and yeah, you could literally cut the audience in half. Here's the ones who are really enjoying this kind of new approach, or and here's people who absolutely hate it. So we struggled to get concerts. So I mean we talked before about you know um, how we kind of sometimes had to literally mount guerrilla attacks on certain events to try and get ourselves seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
There
think.
was
Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say there was a festival, wasn't there?
Oh
That
God, yeah. So yeah, so there was this. I mean, this was a great example of it because it's one where it really paid off. So we were basically trying to get slots on sort of some of the folk festivals, and we couldn't get on. And so there was one, an hour or so's drive away from us called the Middlewich Folk and Boat Festival, very long established folk festival. And Middlewich in Cheshire is on the side of a canal, hence the folk and boat theme. Anyway, we thought, well, you know what? It's not that far away. That it'll take us an hour and a half. We'll just put a ghetto blaster with our kind of backing loops and everything on it, and some instruments to play over us. And we're just going to go and kind of mount this guerrilla busking attack on it. So we turned up, and originally we were kind of looking for a spot, and we found this spot on a street in a doorway. We're playing, and then this guy said, "I've got a canal boat on the edge of the festival on the the river. Come and play on it." And then people will be like, so we were like, "Yeah, okay." So we set up, and in no time we had like a really big audience. We sold loads of CDs because we'd self-recorded and pressed our own album. And this guy bought one, and it just shows you how kind of you never know where you kind of little breaks or moments are going to come from. He took it to a friend of his who was running this really kind of very trendy sort of hipster cult folk label called the Folk Police at the time. Sadly, it's gone now, but it was a really quite an influential little label in Greater Manchester. And we'd sent a copy of this album to them and heard nothing back at all. And of course, this is the thing: this guy buys it, and he knows the guy who runs the label. Turns up at his house, says, "I saw this band busking at the Folk and Boat Festival, and they were brilliant. It'd be right up your street because they're a bit left field." And so the guy from the label said, "You know what? Yeah, I've been sent that album. I've never listened to it." And that made him get it out, put it on, and lo and behold, he contacted us and said, "I love this. I'll license it off you." And of course, that really got us up and running because he had that machinery that we didn't have. He had a
Mm.
distributor, he had publicists, and suddenly we'd gone from sort of busking, a festival to having a record with a little self-done record, to suddenly that record being reviewed in Mojo magazine and played on Radio 2, the folk
Oh,
show and
wow.
stuff like that. And it just kind of urges you up there a couple of
Yeah.
rungs up the ladder.
It just shows that persistence really is key, isn't it?
Well, yeah,
Getting
and
there.
just the power of just kind of not being constrained by what you think is the conventional way to go about things. Sometimes it's just sort of saying, well, if no one's going to open the door for us, you don't have to actually sort of be kind of aggressive and try and kick it in. You can just sort of hover around the edges till, making a nuisance of yourself till someone actually kind of notices you're on the way in or way out of it.
Yeah.
And that will certainly work for us. And it's funny because we were during lockdown, because of the nature of the situation, when that bit of freedom came where you could meet up with people outdoors, we we did exactly that thing. The three of us would meet up on the moors or in somewhere, out of the way,
Yeah.
in some sheltered woodland or a bandstand somewhere, and just do that. Take the ghetto blaster or a battery powered sort of amplifier, and just meet and play. And um, that we enjoyed that so much, and we were filming bits and putting it up on our social media feed, and people really responded to it, and it made us realise that actually, we should do that again. And we've got plans next summer when the weather is better and allows it, that we're thinking we're probably going to kind of try and do more of that, because there's certain places where we haven't got a toehold really at all, and we can achieve so much more by, instead of begging for a slot at some folk club or somewhere in that place, and maybe even if they'll have us on, which is up to question anyway, then they've probably only got a core audience of 30, 40 people or so. And you think about, if we go and set up and do one of those sort of busk shows in a city centre on a busy high street somewhere, you can hit miles more people, and you
Mm.
invariably, there's a good chance that there's going to be that one person who comes past who loves it, takes a CD and plays it to someone who,
Yeah.
opens another door for you. So we are actually planning on doing some more of that.
So if everyone keeps an eye out, Harp and a Monkey coming to a city near
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Well, we'll let people know. I mean, we just got a myriad of ideas. I mean, we'll talk about something later. I think we have another song we're going to play around orchards, and we're just sort of looking at different things we could explore where we might play.
Mm, fantastic. And another thing I wanted to just mention is, in your last song, you were using a glockenspiel.
Yeah.
Is that usual to have that in folk?
No. But this is, we're not a conventional, what people expect, I suppose, a band that does, we do a lot of our own songs, original songs, but we do quite a lot of traditional songs, but we're not presenting them in that way that people have come to expect. So either in that sort of Celtic Ceilidh tradition, or like the English tradition, with your concertinas, and we from the outset wanted this project to be about a storytelling and narratives, and that's what attracted us to folk music in the first place, is more that troubadour tradition. So it's the idea of storytelling, and and narratives, and passing on histories, and that's what attracted us to folk music. So it wasn't the idea of having that musical aesthetic that people have come to associate with it, which in itself, in some respects, some of it's, a bit questionable anyway. Is it any more authentic to play a guitar, which so much sort of folk music is now based around guitar players? Well, guitar is quite a modern piece of technology, really. So, so no, we've never sort of allowed anything to constrain us in that. It was, the music's a framework, for an atmosphere for the storytelling,
Yeah.
which is the tradition of folk that we kind of were interested in. That whole idea of narrative storytelling, songwriting.
Yeah. Well, just before we listen to your second song, I just wanted to ask how you formed as a trio. What was kind of the instigating factor for that?
Well, the three of us had played in different bands together at varying stages over the years, including the last act we'd been in. We had a couple of formal record contracts, and they'd not worked out well, really. And I think we were quite disillusioned by it,
Mm.
and decided that the three of us who were we were good friends, and were the core of the other bands that we'd been in, these other bands that we'd been involved in, and certainly the last one. We wanted to still work together, but I suppose we just thought, well, maybe it's not meant to be in terms of this being a commercial thing, but we're musicians anyway, and we want to do it. And so we'd been more electric based, and we thought, well, let's just get some acoustic instruments, and do it for fun. And if we've got an acoustic instruments, we don't have the same pressures of sort of vans and equipment and what have you. And then we thought, well, let's take it a step further than that. Just for fun, why don't we all go out and buy an instrument that we've never played before?
Wow.
And just kind of start almost from scratch, just kind of take it back to ground zero. Because the other thing about when you've been playing music for many, many, many years, when you're technically proficient, you become, it's a blessing, but it can also be a bit of a curse, because there's certain sorts of tropes that you pick up. So it's like, that, like, oh, if I play this chord, then this chord will work well with it, and then I go to here, and then that'll be the middle eight of the song, and you get caught in these templates, really, and comfort zones. And I suppose what we thought was that, well, if we get some instruments that we don't really know how to play, you get right back to the simplicity of just finding either a really strong rhythm or a really strong melody, and that's what the song will be built around. And then we were like, well, that in a way is folk music, or because folk music is the song of the people, and for it to be songs of the people, they've got to have survived. If you think about it, the songs that perhaps survived and have survived longer than a lot are things like nursery rhymes, hymns, those kind of things that have been written, or for mass, very easy to learn, very strong melodies, and very simple, quite repetitive, but very easy because they needed to be taught to, a congregation or a group of children or what have you, so they could easily kind of learn it.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, how do you achieve that simplicity? And the only way we could think of doing it was by ditching the instruments we'd always played and picking up some that we'd never played, and sort of forcing ourselves back to start point. And that's actually what we did. So Simon had never played a harp before in his life, and he went out and bought a harp. He'd got a viola in his back at his mother's house in the loft that he'd played when he was at primary school but never touched since. So he went and got those. I went out and got a piano accordion. I mean, I'm a pianist, really, but I didn't know how to play an accordion, so I went out and bought an accordion and a glockenspiel. And Andy, who'd been a bass guitar player, went out and bought a banjo, and also bought like a fiddle and we just started like having fun. So it's a way of putting fun back into it as well, because we'd
Yeah.
lost the fun. You know, when you've been through the machine, the industry machine, and then it doesn't work out, and you know, and you're a bit jaded, and you know, and it was just a way of making it fun for ourselves again, and then lo and behold, before you know it, we were actually kind of bizarrely at this point in our lives as men of a certain age, with who's looked like when we were younger men and had actual proper recording contracts, and
Mm.
they didn't come to anything. That now here we are, probably in a much more successful position than we were when we were trying so hard to be successful. You know, it's often the way it
Yeah.
works, isn't it? When you stop trying so hard and start enjoying it, then you come up with something better.
That's just amazing. I love that story. Although I can't help thinking that, yeah, it's fun to learn a new instrument, but incredibly frustrating. To
But yeah, but that depends on the limitation you see of you know, most people want to learn an instrument to become really technically brilliant.
yeah.
But if you kind of try and get in the mindset of like, I'm not ever going to actually try and learn to play this properly. I'll be honest with you, I've been playing the piano accordion now, playing in inverted commas it for what 14 years since we started doing this, and I'm not that much better than I was 14 years ago. But I don't want to be. I've never wanted to go out and have lessons or kind of buy, you know, books that are going to teach me how to be better, because then it would lose that naivety. I'd rather stay quite naive on it, and you know, yes, of course, I've got more confident in being bad than, you know, I was just bad before. Now I'm kind of, you know, can disguise it, so you might actually come and see it and think, God, he can play, but obviously, you know, I can play what I'm playing better. But
You
ask me
had
to
me
do anything
fooled.
else, and I couldn't, you know.
Fantastic. Well, let's have your second song, which is
Okay.
Victorians. What is this song about?
Well, this is a song. Our last album, our fourth album, was called The Victorians, and we collected loads of Victorian songs from all wide range of sources. So broadsheet ballads like street ballads, music hall songs, agricultural songs, working songs. And we deliberately, so well, we chose ones that obviously we like the melody or the tune, but also ones that told different stories. So whether it be from, you know, the fact that you used to be in Victorian times be able to auction off your spouse if you'd had enough of them, through to sort of convicts being sent to Australia, or just a whole wide range of topics. And this song was meant to be the song that kind of encapsulates the whole. So it's almost a conclusion to what you've heard. So it was the melody is mainly from a Victorian song called The Great Exhibition, which is kind of self-explanatory, you know. And then I rewrote the words to it around the idea of that conclusion. So it's addressing the great themes of the Victorian age. So you've got religion, science, evolution, greed, commercialism, owning stuff, you know, all those things that are so central to our lives now that the Victorians sort of, you know, were responsible for kind of introducing us into our lives. And it mentions a peppered moth in the kind of repetitive, the chorus bit. And that's because we've got the peppered moth as well on the cover of the record, because it was a bit of a cause celeb in the Victorian era, because this peppered moth was white with little speckles on it, and it used to disguise itself on silver birch trees, like blend in. And then it was noted during the Industrial Revolution that it turned black, so it could camouflage itself in this new sort of soot-filled, dirty, polluted world.
Yeah.
And there was this big scientific debate at the time about, is this Darwinism before our very eyes, rapid sort of process of evolution? And, you know, it was all these debates. And then it disappeared, obviously. And then in the 1970s, when the Clean Air Act came in, it resurfaced because this moth turned back to its original colour, you know, when the Clean Air Act came in. And
Yeah.
in fact, in sort of recent times in the 21st century, students from scientists from and students, scientific students from Oxford University did a study to sort of see how the Victorian science stood up, and concluded that on the balance of things, that yes, the scientists who had argued that this was an evolutionary process before their very eyes were right. So that's kind of the theme, or one of the themes running through it.
Raise a glass to progress, the gift that keeps on giving. Elevate your status, don't limit your ambitions. Victorians, Victorians. Raise a glass to progress, the gift that keeps on giving. Money makes the world go round, so lose your inhibitions. Victorians, Victorians. Hurrah, me lads, hurrah, science has won the day. Hurrah for Charlie Darwin and the fossils in the bay. Hurrah, me lads, hurrah, science has won the day. I've seen the peppered moths go from black and white to grey. Raise a glass to progress, embrace the new religion. Money buys you freedom, so limit your ambitions. Victorians, Victorians. Hurrah, me lads, hurrah, science has won the day. Hurrah for Charlie Darwin and the fossils in the bay. Hurrah, me lads, hurrah, science has won the day. We've seen the peppered moths turn from black and white to grey. Hurrah, me lads, hurrah, science has won the day. Hurrah for Charlie Darwin and the fossils in the bay. Hurrah, me lads, hurrah, science has won the day. I've seen the peppered moths turn from black and white to grey. See, my friends, the value of imperial trends. The good times need never end if you've still got the cash to spend. See, my friends, evolution makes good sense if you boil it down to pounds and pence. It's survival of the fittest. Hurrah, me lads, hurrah. Hurrah, me lads, hurrah. Hurrah, me lads, hurrah. Hurrah, me lads, hurrah.
I absolutely love that, and it's made me want to go back and listen to the rest of the record to kind of get all the references that you've done as the summary song. So it's a very successful, like,
Good.
summation of
Hopefully
the
there's
record.
people watching this who have the same response.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, but there's that I think I asked you before, and you said that your Victorians record manages to summarize your sound quite well. This feeling of like history and like the new
Yeah, the
feel
merging
to
of
it.
the old and the new, yeah.
Yeah, so how would you describe your sound if you were to?
Well, I think that's what we try to do. It's about blending. You see, we're from the generation that, we're obviously Mancunians, and we're from the sort of the hacienda generation. So we grew up with that whole acid house, and it was all 808 state and acts like that, and electronica, and we were really influenced by that. So it was, how do we kind of bring some of that kind of music that we grew up with? I mean, I'm from Rochdale Borough, and there's a band called Ortekra, who are a really big sort of experimental electronic act, who were a big influence on a lot of what we were listening to, looping. And how do we blend that with organic sounds and it not jar? So it feels sort of quite seamless. And so one way of doing it was that sort of thing that you mentioned before about the Pilgrim's Cross, where we tried to replicate that kind of synthesized, arpeggiated, looping sounds on the actual organic instrument, so that they were almost doing like what a synthesizer or a programmed thing might do. And then obviously finding ways to just subtly blend the two, so that you got like this meeting of kind of very traditional organic instruments and sound beds with kind of modern sensibilities. And when things work out, I mean, this is what I say to people who, there are people who are sometimes a bit, traditionalists about old music and old song. And, but Martin Purdy, I think, who's, one of the, he's still with us, thank God, who's like, such a commanding figure in the world of traditional music. I think he's absolutely right. He said, you can't commit a crime with an old song. The crime is if that song's allowed to be forgotten. It doesn't matter what you do with it, because if you're at least doing something with it, you're keeping it alive.
Yeah.
And so it was like, I remember on our second album, we'd taken an old poem. It was a 19th century poem, and it was in Lancashire dialect, which, who, in fairness, in the modern age, is going to listen and understand, Lancashire dialect, but here's a wonderful piece of poetry, and it was about, a yard of what they used to call yards of terraces, old terrace houses, and each sort of verse of the poem was about the people who lived in one of the houses, and we thought, guys, that's great, it's such a fabulous, evocative piece of writing. So we de-dialected it. So we lost the dialects and just rewrote it in modern English so that people could actually understand what was going on. And then it's also, well, who in the modern age wants to listen to sort of, 20 odd verses? So let's kind of take the edited highlights so that you get a sense of the whole poem, but edit it down to a 3-minute song, so that maybe we're only going to look at the people in 4 of the houses instead of 20 of them. And then we'll give it a chorus as well, because people expect that in modern. And and we did this song. I love this song, and it's one of our most popular sort of songs. People, if we don't perform it, it's like, why didn't you do that song? And yet some people are really kind of purists, are like, well, you've butchered like this thing, and it's like, well, we haven't. And what we found, in the sense that what we've done is we've just reimagined it. There are plenty of versions of people doing this song in dialect, like in its entirety, reenactors, so to speak. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what turns you on, if you're into reenactment, there are plenty of people who do it. It's out there in that form, but it's really off-putting to most people in that form. What we've done is presented it in another way. And what quite often you find people will say in our audiences is that through hearing our version of it, it's given them a sort of understandable route to then go to the original and hear it in a different way and appreciate it. Whereas if they'd have just been presented with the original, they'd have run a mile, this ain't for me, But we've kind of given them a route in that makes the original approachable.
Yeah.
And and so we make no apologies for that. That's what we do.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. But there's another thing that you do, and that's as we've seen in Victorians, actually in everything that you've played so far, and obviously the story you
Yeah.
just told us, is the idea of history in
Yeah.
your songs. How important is that in your writing?
Well, it's important. It's been. Yeah, I'm a historian. When I'm not doing harp and a monkey, that's what I do. And so, I mean, for me, from a selfish point of view, it's kind of a way of blending my two sort of passions together in that respect. But I think that folk music, that going back to that thing we were talking about earlier, and that role that sort of old song had as a kind of pre other forms of communication, pre newspapers, your troubadour would go around and tell stories, and sometimes they'd just be fantastic stories, sort of works of fiction, and sometimes it'd be, gossip of the day, or it'd be kind of keeping old stories, histories, and legacies alive.
Mm.
And I think that, long before the idea, I mean, the word folk as a musical term is a Victorian construct. It's actually quite a sort of modern thing in the history of song. So we're going back way beyond the word folk was ever even invented as a genre of music. It's just old song and old storytelling, and we dip into that music that goes. We'll go back as far as anything that grabs our ear. And it's that, isn't it? That tradition of a narrative storytelling goes way back beyond any concept of folk music as a genre. So yeah, it is important. I think if we are trying to draw on that tradition, then the idea that you also kind of do some historical storytelling is quite important to that tradition. So yeah, I felt that was quite important, but it became, in a way, the next sort of stuff that we're working on isn't drawing on that, because we've done 4 albums, and the last 2 albums have both been kind of thematic in a sense. So the third album that we came out of a big commission that we had with the Arts Council during the centenary of the First World War.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they were all themed songs and storytelling around that topic. And then, we'd found that was a really useful way to reach audiences, was that if you had a theme, when you went to the media to sort of promote a show, instead of just going to the local press and radio or whoever and saying, we're this folk, inverted commas, whatever, song and storytelling band, which is how we usually kind of promote ourselves. It's like, we're coming to do the show and we're great. Yeah, that's what the people who contacted us an hour ago said about themselves when they wanted to promote their show. So what? But if you can say, oh, well, we're this song and storytelling act and we're doing a show about, it gives it a theme. And so we kind of took that on for the last record we did as well, the 4th album, and with the Victorian thing. And it does work, it really does work in sort of opening doors for shows, and especially for promoting shows. It's something different to, just being a band that's playing some shows. You've got a theme to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we kind of wanted to, we've done that now for 2 records, so we wanted to move back a little bit more into the present day with some of the stuff that we've been doing for our next more recent projects.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you mentioned that was it the 3rd album about the war?
The war.
Yeah,
The war,
that was
yeah.
a commission. Now,
Yeah.
our 3rd song we've got today, that's a commission song, Orchard.
Yeah, and that's a song we're about to release that, actually. That was a commission that we got a number of commissions during the past 18 months or so, songwriting commissions.
Mm.
We did one for a big one for the Wisbech and Fenland Museum in Cambridgeshire, where we'd actually launched, again, it's that theme of idea of themes. We'd actually launched the Victorians album in their museum because it's one of the oldest Victorian, sort of natural history and collections sort of in Britain. So we launched the Victorians album in that museum. We basically, they cleared a sort of the aisle, and there was some stairs going up to a first floor, this big winding staircase, and we sat up on the stairs, and the audience were all sat in the main body of the museum going backwards. It was great. It was a superb thing to do. But then, we built up a relationship with that museum through doing that. And then during the lockdown, they'd asked us if they could commission us to write a song about the museum, which we did. We did quite a lot of that sort of work. And so this song that you're going to play next was a commission that we've done quite recently, which was about, it was a local authority wanted to sort of celebrate the work that had been done in a community orchard. So there was an orchard near my part of the world, actually, where I live in Bury, in Greater Manchester. And there was a big nunnery there. And the nunnery's been gone for many years, but the nuns ran a school. The school is still there. The nunnery itself has now been converted into sort of luxury. This is the way of the world, isn't it? The nunnery's been converted into luxury apartments. And then attached to this was the nuns had a walled sort of garden and an orchard. And when the developers were kind of making the nunnery into these luxury flats, they couldn't work out who owned this orchard. So they left it, and it had just grown into complete disrepair. So it's just a mass of brambles and completely impenetrable. And 10 years ago, it had been left for so many years that it's kind of fallen into common ownership. So the council had taken control of it, and they invited a group of kind of guerrilla gardeners to see if they wanted to try and do anything with it. This was 10 years ago, and here we are 10 years on, and they've completely sort of cleared it, and they've now revived the orchard, got a load of sort of Victorian apple trees, rare kind of apple types that you don't see very often anymore. The trees, they've revived them, and they've got this fully running community orchard. They're pressing their own cider, brand of cider from there, and also it's fabulous. And so they said, "Will you write a song to celebrate, what's happened at this orchard?" So I went up there and interviewed the volunteers, and the amazing bunch of people, and the really massive, wide range group from young kids who go to, people who are retired, all ages and backgrounds in between. And so I interviewed them and sort of tried to get a sense of what they would like to be conveyed, and what came across very much was that their sort of achievement as an act of collectivism was what, they were celebrating. So I then recorded lots of them all saying the names of different types of fruit. Now, you won't get this. I think I've just made a token gesture in this to sort of say a few of them myself. But on the actual recording that'll be coming out, there's all these different voices saying the names of different types of fruits. But so yeah, that's the song that you're going to hear now. Is the song that we wrote and recorded. It's actually based around a very old. The melody, again, you see, this is what we tend to do. The melody is a very, very old song, and Andy found it. And it was a banjo led song, and he learnt this melody on his banjo, and then we built this song around this very old song riff from a banjo.
They said the land was overgrown. Yes, they said the land was dead. No grass, no trees, no life to see, deep within its bramble bed. trees. So we grabbed our tools like willing fools, and we did it all for free. And 10 years on, we bear the gifts of our rows of apple trees. Together, by growing together, you know there's so much we can do. By working together, by growing together, you know that we're harvesting truths. Duchess's favourite, Concord, elderberry. By working together, by growing together, you know there's so much we can do. By working together, by growing together, you know that we're harvesting truths. They said the land was overgrown. Yes, they said the land was dead. With rakes and shears and blood and tears, we searched its hidden depths. Now there's birds and bees and life to see, and varieties of fruit. So we raise a glass and drink a toast to our own collective truth.
Another fantastic song, and I'm sure that they were really pleased with the final product.
I hope so. We haven't got, we gave them, actually, we did a little show in a few weeks ago when the weather was better in the orchard just for the volunteers, and it was really good, actually. And, you know, we were talking earlier about the fact about playing those guerrilla type shows.
Yeah.
That's one thing we're looking at, actually, is there's so many sort of community orchards around Britain that we're actually sort of debating whether to do a little kind of series of free shows at orchards dotted around, you know.
Yeah, well, I'll find an orchard. I'd love to see it. Fantastic. Well, that was the thing I was going to talk about next, was that you write a lot about historic things that have happened and you kind of have that history, but that's not the only unique thing, is it? You also will perform these in quite unique fitting settings.
Yeah, well, it's that thing where, you know, when we've sort of touched around this, because it's that idea of, in the same way that, you know, you take it somewhere differently or present it in a slightly different way to just a conventional, you know, here's a band in an established venue, whether it be big, medium, small. It's still a very sort of conventional process. And it's increasingly hard because there's not as many venues as there were. And people just, you know, there are so many other things now other than music that can stop people from going out or doing. So you've got to work harder now, I think, to try and capture people's imaginations and entice them out.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things to do that, aside from obviously doing themed shows and try to kind of draw people in, is to just do stuff in unexpected places. And you know, so like during the lockdown when we were out on the moors, I mean, these are sort of all little ideas that you start putting away, because I remember one day we were just out in the middle of nowhere, just playing, the three of us, and this walking group came past, and they were like, "What's going on here?" Like, well, we're just, and so they just stopped. And so we ended up doing like we just played a show for them. We just did like a 45-minute show for them, because we hadn't played to an audience for years. And they, it was this completely surreal thing. We're on the side of this kind of, in this little wood on the side of this big hillside, doing an impromptu show for a walking group. And then you start getting ideas. Well, that was brilliant. They all kind of loved it. And then the next thing we know, they've all started following us on social media. They're all buying CDs off our website. And you think, there's other ways of doing this than, just going and trying to. And so we're always kind of trying to find different ways of doing things. And we did that. We took that to a really interesting number of places during the First World War commission that we had during the centenary of the First World War, because we were choosing sort of places that were trying to address different aspects of the war, to the idea of men in trenches and all of that sort of stuff. So we even played, like we went and played in prisons. We played in Walton Prison in Liverpool.
Wow.
Because it had housed conscientious objectors in the First World War. So we used that as a kind of a reason to go in there. And then immediately, the newspapers, the radio stations are interested in it.
Yeah.
Because it's something different. Oh, there's this kind of song, storytelling, folk, what have you act, going and playing a show in a prison to prisoners, because it housed conscientious objectors, and there's all these different things then, angles for them to come at.
Yeah.
So we did lots of that sort of stuff. The Victorians thing, again, we spoke about playing in the museum, and so it's just different ways of catching people's imaginations. We did a show during that First World War thing up on the moors, in a big sort of hole in the ground. And it was up on a route during the First World War. This German Zeppelin had been blown off course off the East Coast, and ended up coming across, sort of right across from Lincolnshire over to Lancashire. And so, they were like, what are we going to do? So they just started dropping bombs along the route, on anything that they thought looked like strategically viable. So we set up, in order to tell the story of Zeppelin attacks, we thought, right, well, we'll play on this route, that the Zeppelin came, and it was just, this patch of moorland, and there was a little community where they dropped a bomb, and the only casualty was a song thrush. And the community stuffed it, and it's still in a museum there as a kind of two fingers up. Look, this is the only thing you got, as this bird. Yeah. So it was a great kind of, again, a really unusual little story, and then we played up there. But it was quite a challenging one. We had a solar-powered sound system that we hired. We had to hire a Land Rover to get stuff up on this kind of really quite inaccessible place. And then we were effectively asking the audience to put on the walking boots and undertake quite a big sort of ramble, to get to watch the show. And we thought, well, we might get 20, 30 people there, and it didn't matter because we got funding to do the shows and film them for like a documentary.
Yeah.
And there was hundreds came just because it was something different that really caught the imagination, and it became a day out. So it became like a sort of, well, we can take the family, we can pack a packed lunch, we can go on a walk, it's healthy, it's, great scenery, have our lunch watching a performance, and then head back down again. And they filled a great day out, and you're a kind of part of it. And so, again, it's this idea that this is another thing we've been looking at for next year and next summer, is kind of that idea of creating maybe some days out where it's a free show, but we will provide, we might go to somewhere like the Wirral or wherever, just places that I've been to during recent months with the children. We've been over to the, Merseyside, onto the Wirral, to New Brighton, to the seaside there. And you think, actually, there's a fabulous bandstand near, just overlooking the estuary. We could set up in there, and there's loads of stuff going on around there. And you can say to your audience, come to New Brighton for a day. There's all this stuff going on. You can have a day out, and then we will do a show in the bandstand at this point, and giving people a reason to come, And, if we do that sort of thing, we'll end up with a far bigger audience than we ever would do going to a conventional venue. Okay, where's the sort of recompense from that? Well, it's about the fact that we'll probably end up selling more CDs from that show than we would in a conventional venue, and we'll get more social media followers, and who then hopefully those people will come and carry on the journey with us,
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea, and genuinely, especially when you play it in a relevant place to the tale that you're telling.
Oh, to a tale that you're going to tell. Yeah,
I think that it just adds an extra dimension. And I love it. I just think it's brilliant. Now,
it's like layering, isn't it? It's like layering.
Yeah. Just extra little bits. Yeah. Unfortunately, we are very much running out of time. Okay. So I've got one more question for you.
Right.
Before we hear your final song. And that is, you sang to the prisoners. Did they like it? Did they receive it well?
I'll tell you what, that was one of the bizarrest experiences. We had this romantic version of like a Johnny Cash in San Quentin prison, right? Yeah. Where they're all on the tables going, woo, and going mad. The governor had been brilliant at the prison about letting us go in. We'd been really made up because the BBC had contacted him a few days before and said they were going to come and film it. So we're thinking, oh my God, this is going to be the thing that is going to kind of push us, another level. We got there on the day with all our gear, went into this holding zone. Every single thing we took into that prison, even down to, just screwdrivers, every single item that we took in had to be accounted for so that on the way out, they could check that it was all going out.
Yeah.
We had this massive climb up to the Victorian part, the old part of the prison. We were playing in a chapel, which, of course, right on the top floor of this, and we went in, set everything up. Then the governor decided to inform us that, actually, I'm sorry to tell you, the BBC, we've had to say that they can't come in because we've got a problem with this new drug, which at the time was a new drug, it's not anymore, called spice, which was like a synthetic form of like cannabis, which was really unpredictable. And he said, some people just chill out on it, and some of the prisoners want to fight the whole world on it. And suddenly you're thinking, oh, great. So the BBC can't be exposed to that, but we're expendable. So we're set up in this chapel, and we're just on the kind of the steps up to the altar type thing. And the next thing, the doors open, all these prisoners just come in, and there's no barrier between us and them. There was only about 3 sort of prison guards and about 100 or so like prisoners. And they're all like these surly sort of young guys, sat there like, And right in front of us in our eye line were about 3 rows of like these sort of Chinese Oriental sort of prisoners who were thinking, they probably, this is just such an alien thing. They're probably thinking this is some kind of like new form of torture that the British prison system's thought up on a Monday morning, because it was a Monday morning.
Oh, no.
It's like they're going to make us listen to English folk music sometime. But it was really, it was great. It was hard work because they'd very much taken the approach that, okay, then go on, then impress us. And it was just a slow process, and by the end, it was great. And there was this really funny moment right at the end where this guy says to us, "Oh, yeah, I thought you were going to be crap. It was good. I really enjoyed it. I'll have to come and see you." And Andy said something like, "Why are you digging a tunnel? You ain't going to be seeing us anytime soon, But it was brilliant, but it was not how I didn't turn into the romantic Johnny Cash thing we'd envisaged.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for talking to
It's
us
a
today,
pleasure.
Martin. Great stories, very interesting. It's been a pleasure and lovely
Thank
to
you.
hear your music too. So we've got our final song,
Yeah,
which is
the Gallipoli Oak,
yeah,
isn't it?
Gallipoli Oak.
Yeah.
Can we have just a bit of a background on this?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's quite a good one to finish on in a way because it's a song that we did off our second album. Actually, predates the First World War album, but it's about where I come from or where I grew up in Rochdale Borough. During the First World War, all of the territorial soldiers from old East Lancashire were sent to fight at Gallipoli at the Dardanelles. And amongst my sort of hometown battalion, which was 1,000 strong, there was a teenager who was killed in front of a village called Krithia, and his body was never recovered. And nothing unusual about that. But his parents, it's what happened after the war had finished. His parents had managed to sort of find out whereabouts on the battlefield he'd last been seen. They'd got a couple of people who'd been with him at the time to sort of draw a rough map of where it was. And then in 1922, they set off across the Mediterranean with the sapling of an English oak tree in a bucket of water and this map. And they went over to Turkey, which was no mean feat at the time, and Turkey was sort of on the verge of going to war with Cyprus and Greece at the time as well. So it was quite a fraught time, but they went. When they got to the place on the map where they were going to plant this tree, they realised that the area was being reclaimed for agriculture. But there was a war cemetery being started nearby, and when they went into it, they saw that it was full of men from their son's unit, including a couple of officers of the Lancashire Fusiliers Regiment who were known unto gods. So in other words, they didn't know who they were, but they knew they were officers of the Fusiliers. So one of them could have just been their son. So they plant at the gardener, the Turkish gardener who was looking after this cemetery, they asked him to plant the tree in this cemetery. And then in the ensuing decades, members of the family kept going back over to the Dardanelles and giving the gardeners a bit of money and encouraging that they look after this tree. Now, in March next year, it'll be the centenary of the tree being planted. And there is this one lone English oak tree growing in what's a Turkish national park that's clearly a totally alien species that these Turkish gardeners have nurtured for 100 years. So that's going to be a big project for us next year, in that we're in talks at the moment with the Commonwealth War Graves Commission about how we can perhaps work together to do something to mark the centenary of the tree and to celebrate, to be honest with you, the Turkish gardeners, who are the kind of heroes in a way of the story, because, don't forget, we'd invaded their land and here they are, for 100 years, looked after this tree in memory of someone who was an invader at the end of the day, and they've nurtured it. And so that's the story of the song.
Left this town 1,000 strong. The crowds came out to cheer us on. The band struck up and played our marching songs. They sent us to the Dardanelles. I swear, my friends, it was worse than hell. We saw some things it wouldn't be right to tell. We left our homes and our families. We swore we'd bring those Turks to their knees, to their knees. Won't you lay down? Won't you lay down with me? Won't you lay down in the shade of the lone oak tree? Won't you lay down? Won't you lay down with me? Won't you lay down by the shore of Gallipoli, Gallipoli? We left this town 1,000 strong. There won't be that many coming home. At least my bones will lie here all alone. And if you hear of Krithia, spare a thought, but the boy's still there, the resting place for the pride of Lancashire. We left our homes and our families. We swore we'd bring those Turks to their knees, to their knees. Won't you lay down? Won't you lay down with me? Won't you lay down in the shade of the lone oak tree? Won't you lay down? Won't you lay down with me? Won't you lay down by the shore of Gallipoli, 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 Gallipoli.
Thank you very much for watching. To find out more information about our future Tuesday Folk People sessions, please sign up to our mailing list or keep an eye on our social media and website. Our next session will be a week from today at 8 p.m. See you then.